up early and coming to hear a little bit about VEEAM. My name is Cody Cheek. I'm a VEEAM engineer. I cover the Southeast region. We also have a couple other VEEAM employees here. I'll let you guys introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Keller. I'm your territory manager for state local higher education from Maryland down to South Carolina. So some of you I know I've worked with in the past, others you have to have a conversation with. Appreciate y'all coming out this morning.
I'm Ryan Post. I'm actually a local SE in the area, based out of Raleigh. So any technical question would be any visits or WebExes, I'll be your guys.
Appreciate it, guys. So the difference between Ryan and I'm going to be the channel SE here. So any VEEAM resellers, because VEEAM's a 100% channel organization, my role is to make sure they're up to date as far as the new announcements, technical features, product set, things like that. Whereas Ryan can help you guys help configure VEEAM in your environment, or work on a project you guys are maybe evaluating VEEAM. So big difference there. But again, great resources, either one of us. So come find us afterwards. If you guys have questions, let us know. Right? The door's always going to be open. So let us know if you guys have any questions. If you guys also have questions during the presentation here as well, just raise your hand or interrupt me. Not gonna hurt my feelings. So without further ado, guys, let's really kind of just jump into it. So just a quick agenda. We're going to go over a company overview because how many people are using VEEAM or heard of VEEAM? Oh wow. Okay. Perfect. So how many of those are actually using our VEEAM customers? One? Okay, I might pick on you, so that's up. So we'll go over a quick company overview. We'll kind of skim through that real quickly, since everyone seems pretty familiar with VEEAM. We'll also go over the 7 tips for ransomware, right? Has anyone been hit by ransomware yet? No? That's good. All right. And then also, did anyone attend VEEAM On last week? VEEAM On was VEEAM's annual conference we have. We had it in New Orleans. Anyone heard about any of the announcements we made, anything like that? No? All right, good, good. There was a lot that we announced last week in New Orleans, guys, so we'll make sure to cover that here towards the end. But again, if you guys have questions, just interrupt me, shout, scream, or find us afterwards, right? More than happy to help you out. So again, who VEEAM is today, right? So availability for the always-on enterprise, that's really kind of our messaging where we're going. Right? We started in the SMB space, right, introducing a backup and a replication solution. Right? Whereas historically you had a backup product, you had a DR product. VEEAM kind of changed the game and said, hey, bump that, we have a backup and DR product at one time. Right? So we started in a smaller environment supporting VMware, ESXi, as well as Microsoft Hyper-V, and now we've grown since then. Now we're moving towards those larger enterprises. And as you see, we have over 240,000 customers globally today. And we're adding roughly about 4,000 net new customers per month. Again, that's globally, not just in North America here, but again, those are some pretty big numbers there. So keep that in mind, guys. If you ever run into a scenario or anything like that, you're probably going to see it on the forums, but go ahead, Jason.
So I was going to also let you know, you all know, the state of North Carolina, through local government, higher ed, the state, we've got about 380 customers. So maybe just one in here today, but overall throughout the entire state. So we're a lot of customers, a lot of reference points, if you all are interested.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with 240,000 customers, guys, as I'm sure some of you guys, if you guys are existing VEEAM customers, have checked out the VEEAM forums. Right, so we've run into a lot of scenarios here. Well, can VEEAM help me in this type of backup or DR solution here? And most likely, you're probably going to run into somebody who has. Right, if you look at the VEEAM forums there, we have our R&D department checking on those forums. So it's very different from just a regular forum post here. So if you have a question, maybe check the forums, or again, leverage resources like Ryan and myself. All right, absolutely great resources for us to reach out to. Our doors, like I said, is always going to be open for you. So a little history of VEEAM. Right, again, like I mentioned a second ago, we have a backup replication product. That's really kind of our bread and butter. Right, and then as we progress, we've added functionality based off our user base. Right, people needed or wanted a functionality. Right, one of the topics is ransomware. So people were asking, hey, how can we use VEEAM to protect against ransomware or recover in the case of ransomware? Right, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But as you see, we have file level recovery. So for people that are not familiar with VEEAM, we're a completely agentless solution. So for your virtual environment there, we're going to be able to take a VMware or Hyper-V checkpoint or snapshot, whatever your terminology is there, and we're going to be able to back up and replicate the entire virtual machine for you, but still allow that granular file level recovery for Linux, Windows. We even have explorers, as we call it, for individual application item restores, like emails with an Exchange, documents within SharePoint, SQL table transaction restores, things like that. And then as you see, we're moving forward here, right, in version 9.5, which is what we're on now, we introduced our Nimble integration. Right, we won't focus on this too much today, but again, we are 100% storage agnostic, but we can offer some in-depth functionality if you're running certain storage vendors in a VMware environment. Right, Nimble, NetApp, EMC, and HPE. And then And VEEAM, we announced we're adding actually IBM to the list and a few others as well. So again, if you guys are running those storage vendors, VEEAM, if you're not, we're 100% storage agnostic, it's perfectly fine, but if you are, we can offer you an in-depth integration. Right? We can orchestrate those storage snapshots if you guys are doing anything like that, so on and so forth. We can back up from the storage snapshots, so again, an in-depth functionality there. Is that required? Absolutely not. Also, one of the things is the 2016 Microsoft apps. Has anyone updated to any 2016 apps or running Hyper-V 2016? Anything like that? No? I've kind of noticed the same thing. All right, so if you're running SQL, Windows Server 2016 with REFS there, VEEAM already integrates that with 9.5 day one. All right, so keep that in mind as well. Again, innovate and iterate is one of our pillars we try to focus on there, so make sure we're always supporting the latest versions, like vSphere, right? When the 6.5 or 6.0 came out, we were pretty much 30 days, 60 days out from supporting that hypervisor. All right, so as we're jumping into some of these tips, right? So there's really going to be 7 tips we're going to cover today as far as how you can protect against ransomware. The first is special credentials. Right, so is anyone using just domain admin credentials across the environment? No? Good. Very nice. Okay. So when you're talking about credentials here, guys, again, sometimes it's common sense. Right? It really is, though. So with the credentials, make sure you're using different types of credentials here. So worst practice, again, like I said, using domain administrator for everything. Probably not the best idea to do so. Right, so have different accounts for different types of things, right? So if you're going to have a certain backup administrator, have him have certain credentials here, create a service account for him. That way, you get in there, you're protected against ransomware. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah, pretty straight. Again, it's more common sense here when you're talking about these types of topics. Second is offline storage. Is anyone still using tape today? One? Kind of so-so? You want to talk on that? Using it for archive, or how are you using it?
Just archive off, we go from disk to disk, and then from disk to tape.
Okay, using VEEAM?
No.
We'll talk offline. So, guys, a lot of people have a misunderstanding because VEEAM historically we never supported tapes. We definitely do nowadays, okay? So you're not going to back up straight to tape, but you need to land on disk first and offload that to tape. And that's by design, right? We don't want you to back up straight to tape, right? Because when you want to offer those quick granular restores into that, restoring from a disk repository, right, the backup target where the VEEAM backup file is going to be held, it's going to be a lot quicker when restoring from disk versus tape. Right? But in scenarios like ransomware, tape that, when it's offline there's something to be said about that. Right? So some people say tape's dead. In my opinion, I don't think so. I'm sure Ryan will agree with me there as well. So when you're looking at this, right, tape is one of those, right? That's primarily what everyone thinks of. But also we have other options here as well, as replicated virtual machines. So a lot of people actually have a misunderstanding when they're hearing VEEAM backup and replication. They're thinking, great, VEEAM backs up my VMs, and then replicates that backup file. We can do that, absolutely. We can replicate it to tape, we can send it to another cloud repository. We have some integrations coming in version 10, I'll tell you guys about in a minute. But again, when we're talking about VEEAM replication, this is actually that DR solution for you. So if you run a VEEAM replication job in the interface, it's actually going to create a fully hydrated copy of whatever VM you're replicating. Say it's a 1 terabyte SQL server. We're going to make an exact copy of that 1 terabyte SQL server, put it on another VMware or Hyper-V host, whatever you're running, and it's going to be the exact same size, exact copy of that virtual machine, just on the left in a turned off state. Again, offline there for you. So keep that in mind, because that's what we're talking about when we talk about VEEAM backup and replication. Most people understand that there, but there's still a few that they think we're just replicating the backup file. So keep that in mind. It definitely is a backup and a DR solution in one line. Then the primary storage snapshots. Right, so these people always ask me, okay, well, Cody, how can I lower my recovery point objective? Right, I have, say, 2-3 parts in my environment. Right, how often can I run my VEEAM backup jobs? Technically, in the software, you can run your backup jobs continuously. It says in the interface continuously. But again, keep in mind what's happening there, right? VEEAM, we're an agentless solution, so we're going to leverage a VMware snapshot or a Hyper-V checkpoint. So how often do you really want to take a VMware snapshot in your environment? You want to take that every 10 minutes? Probably not, right? You can, absolutely. But do you want to? No, and the reason is, and some people may be unfamiliar with this, is the VMware snapshot stun. Does anyone ever run into that, trying to consolidate or close a VMware snapshot? A little painful. So this is really why we introduced our storage snapshot integration. So VEEAM, leveraging a VMware snap, nature of the beast, sometimes when people run a full backup, or it takes maybe an hour or 2 hours there, during production hours, people are using that machine. So as people are using the machine, all those changes are being written to the open snapshot. Right? So when the job is done, VEEAM tells the hypervisor, go ahead and close and commit that VMware snap. those types of scenarios, if those changes have grown very large, VMware sometimes has an issue writing back all those changes into the production VM, sometimes causing it to freeze up. People call it VM stun. Sounds like you're familiar with that. Right? So now, with our integration with these storage arrays here, hey, maybe you want to take storage snapshots between your storage arrays maybe every hour, every 30 minutes, because those can be instantly created. You don't have to worry about that VMware snapshots consolidation issue. Right? And the nice part about that is you can actually use Veeam to drill into those storage snapshots without running a single backup job or replication job. Restore the entire VM from those, application items like SQL items, SharePoint documents, guest files, entire VMs you name, without running any backup from those storage snapshots. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds, if that makes sense, right? You have the efficiency of a storage snapshot and the ease of use and recoverability options with Veeam, all in the Veeam interface. Then Cloud Connect. So this is a Veeam terminology, Cloud Connect. So what Cloud Connect actually allows you, as the Veeam user, to do is actually send your backups or your replicas to an offsite cloud repository. All right, so we actually have Veeam, again, it's a 100% channel organization. So some of our channel partners have actually signed up as a Veeam Cloud Connect partner, which basically allows them to carve up certain storage space or DR space, right, replication resources for you as the customer. And what is unique about Cloud Connect is that there's no more VPN established between your site and theirs. Right? All the data is being sent over a single port, and they have an SSL certificate they've acquired, so we still know everything's going to be secure for you guys. Right? So again, that's another option there. And that achieves what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, that 3-2-1-1 rule. Right? 3 different copies of your data, 2 different types of media, one of those being offsite. Is anyone using Cloud Connect today? No? Okay. Then lastly, rotating hard drives. Right? Kind of, I like external USB hard drive, right? Very straightforward, right? We all have one, probably back of our own laptop or desktop or something like that. This is also a good option here for you, right? Veeam, we're 100% storage agnostic, so you can back up to a SAN, NAV, local disk, I mean, anything you really need to from a disk repository standpoint. But also think about a rotating hard drive. Very simple, nothing crazy complex about it. You run a full backup to it, you have that air gap, right? You disconnect from the network, it's going to protect you against those ransomware types of activities. Okay? So again, very simple. Think of it more as like it's tape, keeping it offline, but it's a disk repository. Right? And Veeam has options in there for you to say, hey, where this storage shard we're backing up to is rotated by hard drives, right? So we know when we run that next backup job there, the existing backup file we ran the last time, we don't expect that. So it's intelligent enough to know that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind as well. So that's just tip number 2, though, guys. But is this all making sense as far as how to get those backups and that data offline? See some head nods, I see some glazed eyes. All right, leverage different types of file systems for backup storage as well. All right, VMware Windows applications. So I tend to say, hey, you know what, if you have a storage target and you want to provision that to like a physical RDM to a Windows server here, not a bad option. But in these types of scenarios here, you need to think about it a little bit further, right? So different types of repositories, Linux-based repositories, right? So Veeam actually has an integration with EMC Data Domain. Is anyone running any of these storage systems up here? Data Domain, Exagrid, Store Once? What are you guys running? Data Domain? You guys have Boost? Data Domain Boost, the licensing?
We do not.
Do not? Okay. So for us to integrate with these data domain, first off, there's 3 different flavors of Veeam. We're talking about Veeam Availability Suite right now, guys. That's the product name. And there's going to be 3 different flavors of that. There's Veeam Availability Suite Enterprise Plus, which is the highest tier. We have Veeam Availability Suite Enterprise Edition, which is the middle, probably the most popular. And we also have Veeam Availability Suite Standard. For this integration to work with your data domain, which the in-depth integration, I mean, is you need to make sure you're running the Enterprise or Enterprise Plus Edition, and also have the data domain boost licensing with that. Again, it helps us with some of the synthetic processes there, but hey, if you guys are not running Enterprise Edition of Veeam, or you don't have the data domain boost licensing, not a problem at all. We're still going to be able to back up to it. You just have to add that as a CIFS SMB share. All right, so again, we're not saying you can't back up to that, but we can offer in-depth integration. And that applies for data domain as well as the HP Store Once rates. Right, so kind of the equivalent HP's data appliance. Right, make sure you have the Catalyst licensing with that. It's kind of the equivalent of data domain boost. Make sure you're running Enterprise or Enterprise Plus edition with those. Now, a lot of people talking about those 2 data appliances specifically, and this is more just on a best practice because I'm seeing it more and more these days, is people say, hey, Cody, I have a great data domain, it's acquired in my environment, it's plugged in, I want to back up directly to it. Can you do that? Absolutely. Should you do that? Maybe you need to have a deeper conversation. And where I'm going with this, guys, the deep appliances are great at what they do. Right? Data domain, I mean, there's a ton of them sold today, so people love them. Right? They're for good reason, right? They're great appliances there. They can crunch those flat files, which is that's Veeam's backup file formats. There's a flat file sitting on a disk. They can crunch it down to such a small footprint that, you know, when it comes to long-term retention, it's a great option there. You can hold longer-term retention on those arrays. But when you're talking about those granular restores, like instant VEEAM recovery and things like that, right? We actually have to wait for that VEEAM appliance to rehydrate that backup file before VEEAM can do anything with it. Right, so again, more just a best practice here. Can you back up to it? Absolutely. Would I like to see that more used as an archive play? Definitely. All right, so back up to some sort of non-DDoS appliance first, even if it's 1 or 2 restore points, right? Because most of the restores you guys have to do these days is usually for the most recent copy of the data. Right, like if you get hit with ransomware, you're not going to restore your data to you know, backup until 2 months ago. Right, you're going to go back to the smallest RPO there. So keep that in mind there, guys. And Exegrid's a little bit different because they have that landing zone. So if you guys are unfamiliar with Exegrid, it's basically DDoS appliance. Half of it is treated as not a DDoS appliance, the other half is. So we back up to it, so we still have those quick granular level restores from it, right? Very, very fast. And then also a Linux server with JBOD using NFS mount there. So again, really the whole message here, guys, is use different types of file systems for the backup storage, right? Don't just use Windows across the board there and the same credentials with that. Make sense? Head nods? Storage snapshots, right? So this is something I talked about briefly just a second ago. Take storage snapshots. People always ask that. We talked about more of the recovery point objective here. This is more just keeping those storage snapshots offline. All right, so as you can see here, right, VEEAM's going to integrate with those storage systems. In version 10, this is something I actually did not add to the deck, is that we're actually opening up our APIs, so the storage integrations we have today is going to grow quite a bit when version 10 is released, which version 10 is still some ways off. It's going to be somewhere Q4 to Q1, right? So January, December timeframe until version 10 is released. But again, keep in mind there, VEEAM's going to be able to drill into those storage snapshots. So we're going to be able to drill into those, restore what you need from them, and also you can use those in the case of a ransomware attack. And here we go. I'm sure you guys have heard the 3-2-1 rule. All right, raise your hand, anyone? Yes, see the head shut? Yep, okay. Has anyone heard the 3-2-1-1 rule? And I heard it for the first time the other day. It's getting even bigger now. It's a 4-3-2-1-1 rule, but it's not the point. 3 different copies of the data, 2 different types of media, one of those being off-site, and nowadays, ransomware, one of those needs to be offline. We gave you a couple options before as far as how you can do that. But again, you want to make sure you keep one of those offline. So with VEEAM, there's really a number of different ways we can go about it. I recommend if you're setting up VEEAM, and really if you have 2 virtual machines, or any physical machines in the environment, or you have 1,000 virtual machines in the environment, you're going to want to back up local to a local storage device first, and then you can run what we call a backup copy job. Right? So when I was talking about VEEAM replication earlier, we're saying, hey, VEEAM can replicate the backup file. That's what we call it as a VEEAM backup copy job. All it does, it's extremely simple, guys, just makes a second copy of the already compressed and dedupe backup file that VEEAM creates, because VEEAM is going to dedupe and compress your backup file for you. It's just going to make a second copy of it and send it off to another storage device. That could be local at the primary site. That's great, as long as you're making sure you're setting another copy of that data off-site as well. Right? And you're setting it to a cloud repository, tape, to another dedupe appliance, another disk target, you name it there. Right? You have a ton of different options there. So if you get anything from the presentation today, guys, keep in mind how flexible VEEAM is as well. Right? So there's not one specific way on how you can configure us and deploy us there, so make sure you keep that in mind. So backup local, backup off-site, and you're going to have those storage snapshots if that's an option for you guys. You have that available for you. Or if you don't, right, you can have the VEEAM replication job, right, where that's going to create a fully hydrated copy of the VM on a VMware host located off-site. And then one offline, right, whether we're talking about rotated hard drives, whether we're talking about tapes, whether we're talking about a cloud target, you name it there. All right, so make sure you have one of those offline. Visibility. So this is really talking about the VEEAM Availability Suite. VEEAM Availability Suite actually combines 2 different VEEAM products into one line item for you. Right, so has anyone heard of VEEAM 1? Are you using VEEAM 1 today? A little bit? Okay. You guys have it deployed, I'm guessing, in the environment?
Sir,
You have it deployed in the environment today?
I think I had it for a little while.
A little bit? Okay. So, do you know what version you're on?
I
Don't? Okay. No worries. VEEAM 1 is our monitoring, reporting, capacity planning tool. So people that are unfamiliar with what VEEAM 1 is. In 9.5, we actually added a feature specifically targeting ransomware. Right? And it's actually, it's called possible ransomware activity. Right? In VEEAM 1, there's over 250 alarms, I believe, nowadays. They're all pre-configured for you. Right? But you do need to go in there and make sure you edit these alarms, right? You don't want to get blown up with 200 some on email notifications on things you don't care about. Right? So no one wants that. But there's an alarm in here. It's possible ransomware activity. So basically it takes two different actions here. It says, okay, if this happens in the environment and this happens at the exact same time, we're going to trigger this alarm. Right, so again, this isn't your complete answer to ransomware or anything like that, but keep in mind, this is one of the updates we included in VEEAM 1 and 9.5. Right, so you're going to want to make sure that you have visibility into that, right? So is anyone using any type of monitoring, reporting tool specifically having to do with ransomware? Anyone? No? Okay. So again, keep that in mind, VEEAM 1's in there, but it's also, with VEEAM 1, one of the biggest benefits of it, guys, is it's going to be the only monitoring reporting tool that integrates with VEEAM backup replication. So say you're looking for an automated report every month or every week, however often really, because you can schedule them however often you like. VEEAM 1 report that'll tell you, okay, which VMs in my environment are being backed up, are being replicated, and more importantly, which ones are being unprotected. All right, that way, in the case you do get hit with ransomware, hey, I have a detailed report here saying, hey, this VM was hit, we need to go restore back, and this is the RPO for it. Right? You can change the scope saying, okay, I need my RPO to be a month, a week, a day. And you can change the scope of it in the report there and say, hey, you know what? Schedule it, send it to upper management, whoever you guys need to there. And again, you don't have to go in there manually, make sure and check every day. If people are spinning up new VMs in the environment, right? If admin's doing that, you want to make sure they're being backed up and replicated. There's ways in VEEAM to set up your backup jobs. Right? So, and then you have VEEAM 1 here being able to give you visibility into those jobs, and replication backup and saying, you know what? I know I'm 100% confident we're backing up our entire environment here because I have support telling us so. And in VEEAM backup replication, guys, what I mean as far as giving admins deploying new VMs in the environment is when you go to add the VMs in a VEEAM backup job, a lot of people don't realize that there's actually a few little icons in the top right-hand corner. Unfortunately, I don't have a snippet of it here, but there's hosts and clusters, VMs and templates, data stores and VMs, and then VMware tags. Anyone using VMware tags today? I don't see it that often, but every now and then I do. Anyone? Okay, so this may be a reason why you want to start using VMware tags. Right? Again, so if you have that admin in the environment that keeps deploying VMs for short-term projects, whatever it may be, and you want to make sure they're being backed up. Every time you spin up that VM, if you associate a certain VMware tag to it, and you set up your VEEAM backup jobs off of this here, VEEAM's going to automatically query vSphere and actually determine, hey, this is all the virtual machines with this VMware tag, add to this backup job, automatically. So you don't have to go back into the job each time and add that VM that you just deployed. Right? You don't have to use VMware tags. You can categorize it by data store, host, cluster, you name it. But keep that in mind, guys. We're trying to streamline the whole process here, make it as easy as possible. And then here's what some of the alarms look like. So this is a quick snippet of what VEEAM 1's monitoring and reporting tool looks like. This is the alarms view. So as you can see here, we try to categorize the alarms on the left-hand side, right? So if you're running a completely VMware environment, you can go to the Hyper-V side here and disable every one of those alarms. Right? Obviously, they're not going to apply for you there. Right? Again, there's over 250 here, so there's quite a few. And all you have to do really, guys, is just right-click and edit that alarm. Say, hey, I want to be notified, say, when a certain VM is spiked with CPU memory usage. Hey, I want to make sure I'm notified when it reaches this point. Say it's 90% utilization or 80%, whatever you think you want to be notified on, you can set that. You can customize these alarms pretty much however you like. Right? And then again, on ransomware, this is something you can also customize as well for your environment. Very, very easy, guys, not rocket science by any means. So if you're not using VEEAM or unfamiliar with VEEAM interface, go to the VEEAM website and check it out. Right, we offer fully functioning 30-day trials there. So when you want to actually start getting that deployed and get that and start playing around with it, 30 days from the time you download, from the time you install. But again, this is something that you guys can offer today. And there's even a free edition, which I'm not sure if this alarm specifically is included in the free edition there, but when you download the trial, when that free edition, when the trial runs out, it's just going to revert back to the free edition. So it's not like it's going to disappear or anything like that in the environment. So you're going to have a very watered down functionality, but again, it may be able to help you guys out in some of these scenarios. All right, so the VEEAM backup application customers. I'm guessing you guys are not running VEEAM 1 today. Did you guys know what VEEAM 1 was? Or is this all information you guys already know about? I'm talking to myself, right? All right, guys. So that's a quick view of what VEEAM 1 looks like here, guys. And then 7, we talked about it a second ago as well, the backup copy job. Like, what the backup copy job do to work for you guys? Right? Yes, there's other ways to get the data off-site here. And hey, maybe you don't want to use a VEEAM backup copy job. Right? So the thing to know about them is that it's not taking that existing restore point and moving it over. It's just making a second copy of it and moving it over. Right? That's what's important here. Right? So if you get hit with ransomware, it's not like it's going to affect your backup and your backup copy job restore points. They're completely separate from one another. Right? So when you're looking at kind of a retention standpoint, backup on site, short-term retention, whatever you deem necessary. So whatever you guys have to restore most often, whether that's the past week, month, couple months, whatever it may be there, right? good to go. Maybe that something got encrypted there, right? Crypto lock. Perfectly fine because you still have your backups offsite as well with the backup copy job. All right, which is making the second copy of the backup file, sending it across, or sending it to a store device on site. So again, they're completely separate restore points there for you. And this is also something where we can offer that GFS retention. Right? If you guys have that long-term retention needs, which I'm sure some of you guys do, I need a certain amount of weekly fulls, monthly fulls, yearly fulls here. The backup copy job is going to do all the work for you. So first time the job runs, it's going to be a full backup. The second time after that, it's going to be an incremental run. Right? But say you need it to be this is my monthly full. The nice thing about the backup copy job, guys, is after that initial full is copied across the line, it's never going to send another full backup across. Right? It's going to copy over the incremental backup, but when it lands on a storage target, whatever you choose that is, off-site, it's actually going to build that full backup. Think of it as like synthetic full, like you would run a forward incremental synthetic full. Right? It's just one of VEEAM's backup methods you can run on-site. Right? So again, you're never going to have to copy the full backup across the line there, but they're completely separate restore points, retention policies there as well. So hopefully you guys are familiar with that there. So keep that in mind. And then this is kind of what it's going to look like, right? So we have data mover servers here, your VEEAM backup server. Again, backup to its mobile storage target first. Right? The gateway server here, send it across, whether it's a VM, physical server device, whatever it may be there. Just make sure that source backup repository is, whether cloud, tapes, whatever it may be there, that you're going to protect against ransomware. One of the things we just mentioned a minute ago. All right. Also, I do get a lot of questions. Was anyone actually using a data domain or a store once device today? I thought I saw a hand, right?
We have data.
You have data domain. Do you have two or just one?
We have two. One on-site, one's off-site for replication.
Replication. Okay, so you're already using the data domains to talk to one another. Okay, so that's another option as well, guys. Right. So when we're talking about backing directly to a data domain, running that backup copy job, sometimes that rehydration process can be an issue. Right. So in some scenarios, it makes absolute sense to, hey, let's not run a VEEAM backup copy job. Let's just have the data domain copy between one another. Right, because it doesn't actually have to do that rehydration process. Right, same thing applies for an HTTP store once or any other DB appliance. Right, does that make sense? Having it do that process there for you, because again, VEEAM's still going to be able to drill into those backup files off-site. You just have to import the backup. It's just one easy little step. So keep that in mind as well, guys, because again, data domains are great what they do as far as crunching those flat files down, except when you have the data domains talking to one another there, we don't actually have to wait for the rehydration process. So, a little tip there. And then I thought this was very relevant for this conference here as well. Here's a customer success story here. So, crypto locker virus infected faculty, computers, and encrypted files. Right? VEEAM actually helped Bedford School restore every encrypted file forever. Right? So again, we have tons of success stories on the website exactly like this. So if you're looking for a use case, well, yeah, I'm not sure if VEEAM's really going to be a good fit for my organization because we have some very specific needs. Ask us. Let us know. I mean, we have, can't even count, probably a couple hundred success stories on the VEEAM website nowadays.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, easy now. So in 240,000 plus customers today, guys, there's quite a few. Again, I can almost guarantee there's an organization probably running the same issue you guys are trying to solve with your data protection solution. All right, now some of the VEEAM announcements here. I want to make sure we cover this here, guys, because then last week we did have VEEAM as our annual conference in New Orleans. We had a lot of things that we came out with. All right, so one of the things is CDP. Anyone using a continuous data protection solution today? Zerto, CurvePoint, anything like that? Okay. So when we talk about the VEEAM replication functionality, one of the limitations for us was, hey, we're still leveraging the VMware snapshot. Now with that process there, how often do you really want to run that job? Right, again, my opinion here, probably no more than every 2 hours. Right, because think about the VMware snapshot, all the change being written to the OpenSnap, we have to close that, commit that, and you have to kick off that job again in that never-ending cycle if you chose the continuously option. So here in version 10, which is not released yet, we're going to be able to offer a continuous data protection solution. Anyone familiar with like a Zerto? No? Never heard of it?
Heard of it.
Okay. So basically all they do is replication. This is kind of where people would say, hey, I need an RPO of seconds or minutes here for those virtual machines. VEEAM, I'll put my hands up 10 times out of 10 and say, hey, we don't do that. We don't offer a continuous data protection solution. We're a near continuous data protection solution, right? So it runs on a schedule here. In version 10, vSphere is actually opening up a new API, VAIO, which is actually allowing us to offer a continuous data protection solution. So now when you need an RPO for those replicated VMs off-site of seconds, 15, 10 seconds or so, VEEAM's going to be able to offer that for you. Again, that's something we announced at VEEAM last week there, so it's not out today. You will have to run vSphere 6.5 right, to be able to allow this functionality, but this is something that's coming, so that's huge news for us. Any questions around that, guys? Does that make sense? As far as the RPO, continuous data protection versus non-near continuous?
Will that be another module you have to purchase, or? will
So
it be
that's,
built into one of the current?
Yeah, no, that's a great question there. So honestly, it's been undecided. They have not told us there. What I would imagine is, like we were talking about earlier, VEEAM Availability Suite. There's the 3 flavors of the VEEAM Availability Suite. I would assume that this functionality is probably going to be in the Enterprise Plus level, but again, they haven't told us that yet, right? Because they probably obviously don't want us to tell them everyone.
So one thing that differentiates us from everyone else is traditionally all the legacy backup products out there, everything that Cody talked about with all the explorers for Exchange, Active Directory, SQL, and all that, that's been additional components, to your point. You got a license, just a backup product, then you know, legacy products, every agent I've got to deploy, you've got to purchase that. Ours, we're a full encompassing solution. We don't a la carte really anything. We do have a couple of add-on things for Office 365 now, and then we did announce agents for workstations and servers for Windows and Linux. Those 2 pieces. Those are the only pieces we're a la carte, but traditionally everything is fully included in the product. So it creates a better cost structure for everyone. You know going into it, there's no true up or any of that.
So is there gonna be a cost now for the endpoint security?
For the
Endpoints, right? Physical laptops and desktops.
So we'll always have the free version if you've been running that. That was the core product. Pretty much everything starts out with free for VEEAM, and then we go on to a paid version that takes a lot more.
Gotta get you hooked.
So, but the functionality mirrors, on the paid version, mirrors everything we do on the virtual side. So, and it's nowhere near the cost that the virtual side is, to be honest. And that's still our core product. So we're doing an add-on. I think it's servers for agents, $150 a year per server subscription. And then if you go to a 3-year, it's 20% off of that. So that's MSRP. So you
You can still keep using the free version.
absolutely, we're not going to go do away with that.
Yeah, speaking on the free edition, does anyone use VEEAM Endpoint Backup at all? Yep. No one. No one else? No one ever? Anyone heard of it? I'm surprised. Oh, I saw one in the back. All right, so that's really what the VEEAM agent, which we're going to go into here in just a second. It's a free edition, right? It's really built for exactly what it sounds like. Back up your endpoints. Absolutely free. So worst case scenario, guys, go home, back up your home computer with it. Right? Perfectly fine. It integrates a VEEAM backup application, but we'll get into in just a second what we're doing with the VEEAM agent for Windows. Right? It's basically the next version of that VEEAM endpoint backup.
To your point, that free edition, we had over 1 million downloads.
Yeah, that actually broke records here, totally with VEEAM.
But, yeah,
We're kind of starting to roll that out now.
yeah, so it won't go away.
Yeah, sadly not going anywhere.
Capital, getting some, at least a 1-day backup, so if we have ransomware or even hard drive, we've got the user data, but
Correct.
we can back up.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Kind of a side note, Jason brought it up there. Is anyone using 365 for Exchange today? 1, 2, 3. Okay. What are you guys using to back up that data? Anything? Nothing? Microsoft? Yeah.
What are you doing after the 30 days?
Well, we're using archive now.
Yep.
Should be doing it for 90 days. That's what their best practice is. Anything after that, they expel. They're not in the backup business.
Yep. And if you read the fine print there, Microsoft will flat out tell you, hey, we're not here to back up and protect your data here. That's your data. We're just hosting it for you. All right, so that's why VEEAM, and I don't have a slide on here, but we actually have introduced a VEEAM backup for Office 365. All right, so I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. So all the existing VEEAM customers here, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, that promo still going?
It is.
So,
Yeah,
What's up on that?
so right now, if you're currently a user or potentially becoming one, I'm going through some of the cards, I know we're having some discussions with some of you all. But if you're a current customer, you purchase before June 30th, you actually get unlimited users for 1 year, free.
Unlimited users to what?
back up your Exchange in 365 on-prem. Because that is what the VEEAM backup for Office 365 product does, right? And today it is just Exchange, but a VEEAM on as well, in later versions of the VEEAM backup for Office 365, we've announced that we're going to be supporting SharePoint and OneDrive for Business, right? Not the other OneDrive, just strictly OneDrive for Business there. But again, that's huge news. So when people are saying, hey, I have all this data up here, how am I going to be able to back up and protect that, right? Integrate with my existing DR and backup solution, right? VEEAM's answer that question for you guys.
And Microsoft's a very large alliance of ours, so we're not knocking them when we're saying, what are you doing after 30 days? What are you doing after 90? No different than one of our other products, the management pack for SCOM. we've worked with them to develop these products. They're very aware of it. It's just not a business they want to be in. So they're helping us develop these products, fine tune them so they work correctly with their products, and then bring them to market. Because they could very easily have done this. It's just not something they want to be in.
Exactly, exactly. And we have a really good relationship, like piggyback on what Jason said there, guys. We have a really good relationship with Microsoft, and that's one of the reasons we have the VEEAM Explorer series, right? So the VEEAM Explorer series, it's the VEEAM terminology, but it's specific functionality built around Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, Oracle, as well as Active Directory there. So when you're leveraging the VEEAM backup for Office 365, the restore options, it basically takes those Exchange database files and actually present them to the VEEAM Explorer, again, all in the back end, so you don't have to do this manually. And then when you literally expand out the tree on the left-hand side, if you saw the interface, you know what I was talking about, but expand out the tree, you see every one of your users, you just expand that out, you drill into their inbox, you can browse through emails, there's some e-discovery options, say, hey, HR contacted me because X employee is no longer here, we need to go find this individual email, or whatever the scenario is, right? You go in there and search a keyword, search their entire inbox, their deleted items, calendar, you name it, and you can just right-click, you can restore that back to that person's inbox, like it never left. Somebody else's inbox, you can export it as a PST, MSG file, so the restore options and within the VEEAM Explorer for Exchange specifically, it's one of my favorite, but it's extremely, extremely easy, guys. Again, not rocket science by any means. And again, if you don't believe me, go to the website and try it out. So that's the 365 backup. Again, we are adding SharePoint and OneDrive for Business down the road, but again, Exchange for 365 is offered today. Now, where Jason stole my thunder here, this is one of the big limitations we had before. VEEAM was, hey, well, best of breed for your virtual environment. VMware Hyper-V, we've got you covered. We've got you back. Physical? So now, I'm extremely happy to say, we now support both sides of the environment. So your VMware environment, Hyper-V environment, obviously we've got that covered. But now when you have those physical workloads, right? Maybe you have a machine that has just such a heavy workload on it that doesn't make sense to virtualize it. Or maybe it just can't be virtualized for whatever reason, incompatibility, things like that. You can now install an agent for Windows or Linux, right, with two different agents here, right? Install it on that physical machine, and you can back up to your existing VEEAM backup target, right? So the same place you're backing your VMs up to, you can have that same central location, back up to that repository there, and then you can restore guest files. You can actually restore a Windows physical machine as a Hyper-V VM. It's kind of neat in my opinion. So it's going to integrate with VEEAM backup replication. And then in version 10, one of the announcements is that we also are going to be able to push out those agents within the VEEAM backup replication interface when version 10 is released.
So what is the difference between this agent and the free endpoint?
Great question. So there's going to be a few different flavors of the Windows agents, and talking about Windows specifically. There's going to be the Server Edition, which is the highest tier, offers the most functionality. There's going to be the Workstation Edition, and there's going to be the Free Edition. So say you have a physical SQL box in the environment, right? And you want to make sure you're getting an application-consistent copy of it. You're going to want to make sure you run the Server Edition because that's the only edition that allows an application-aware processing feature. Where we can trigger a VSS snap and make sure it's quiesced, and we can log truncation, log shipping, the full 9 yards is included there.
So basically everything that our virtual product does. The free version, it's just a hard backup. That's it. Can't be scheduled. Plug it in, hit the button, fire it off. This scheduled backups, everything you normally do. And I'm sure what everybody's thinking is, well, everybody's been doing this for years. We built our product for virtualization, so we're kind of going backwards here in our mind to cover this, based on what the market needs and what end users are telling us. There's still that core couple of servers that need to be physical. So again, we're kind of in our mind taking a step back, but it's from the needs of the customer.
Are these managed from a single location or?
Yeah, so good question. So that's kind of, alluded to it a second ago, but today if you have, say, 10 physical Windows servers, you need the agents on. You need to go to each physical server and install the agent. You back it to your VEEAM backup replication repository. For the most part, you're probably not going to go in there and change job settings that often. Pretty much, you're going to set, hey, I want to run this every day or every 12 hours, something like that. So you don't really need to go in there and change that. But if you need to be able to go and push out the agents, so you have your virtual solution, you need to go add and push an agent out through VEEAM backup replication. In version 10, you're going to be able to do that. Whereas right now, you have to go to each individual box and install the agent right now. Right? But it does integrate. You will see your agents in VEEAM backup replication there. So yes, management to a certain degree there, but yes and no to answer your question. Does that work for you? Yeah. And we can talk offline. I've demoed that too. You want to actually see a lot of action.
So the stores and all that part is managed from your regular.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can go in the agent.
The only part you really have to do manually is the
just deploy. Exactly. And then also keep in mind, guys, we integrate with the lab techs and Kaseya's of the world. So if you have a RMM tool here, it's a free plugin there. You can use that to help do that exact same thing. So no worst case scenario. So again, that's the agent for Windows. We also have the agent for Linux, same thing, server edition, workstation edition, and the free edition. So pretty straightforward functionality. And like Jason said, guys, the 365 product as well as the agents are going to be subscription-based only, no perpetual licenses of those. Right, so that's a little different. Historically, VEEAM's always been a perpetual license. You purchase it, you own it, done. Right, so these are going to be subscription-based here, so keep that in mind as well. I think, Jason, you said it was, I think the server edition is running around about 150 per server, yeah, MSRP per server per year. Workstation, I think it's somewhere like $45 per server per year.
And I think that's the commercial MSRP, so obviously you all public sector, so you get a discount off of that you can start with for beating up a partner.
So, yeah, keep that in mind, guys. All making sense? Pretty excited about it? Probably not as excited as me. Okay. And then here's some of the, the other things we announced in VEEAM as well. Anyone have NAS devices they need to back up? 2? No. This is another limitation that we won't have still until version 10 release. We're going to back up NAS, network attached storage. So that's really, really important here for a lot of people. Say, hey, you know what, you have those SIF shares hanging in the environment, things like that. There's workarounds, we can get you to the end result there, but really now we'll be able to really go out and say, hey, you know what, you have a NAS device, we'll be able to back it up for you. Right, so individual file retention, certain versions for a certain amount of time, things like that. Keep that in mind. So that's, again, coming out in version 10. The CDP, we talked about that already, right? So the continuous data protection solution, right? And we're being able to do that because of vSphere 6.5 and that VAIO API. And then this is something that I probably in every conversation nowadays, right? Especially with ransomware, right? How do I get the data off-site? Okay, if I get it off-site, where is it actually going, right? VEEAM leverages our 100% channel ecosystem that our Cloud Connect partners that we talked about earlier. But now, because again, we listen to our existing customer base from those forums I was telling you guys about earlier. So if you have a feature or something that you want to see in the VEEAM product set, seriously guys, go to the VEEAM forums and tell us about it. Right? That's how we're coming out with all these new features and functionalities and products, is because we're listening to the customer base and saying, hey, this is obviously what they're needing, what they're wanting. Right? So this is another example of that here. People are saying, hey, I get you guys have the Cloud Connect backups, we can send that over there, we have DR in the cloud, things like that, but I really want to be able to use the really cheap deep storage from S3, Glacier, Azure Blob, things like that. I want to be able to tie that in directly to my VEEAM backup replication interface. Version 10, we're going to be able to do so. Right? So Amazon, Azure, as well as Swift. All right, so that's coming in version 10 as well. So again, you still want to back up on-prem, but you can send the backups off-site there, and you'll be able to restore what you need from them. But again, keep in mind, you still want to make sure you're backing up on-site first. Make sense, guys? Any questions around that? Oh, and also I want to let you guys know here, this is really just for the backup files. Like I talked about replication earlier. This is really not so much, you're not going to be able to replicate your VMs to an AWS instance, but you can replicate your backup file for that backup copy job, absolutely. That's the whole goal. We also have something else, I don't have a slide on it here specifically, but I want to make sure I bring it up. Does anyone have any workloads running in AWS? No? Oh, okay. So we also announced another product here as well that's going to be an agentless backup for machines running in AWS. Right? So with that there, and it's actually pretty neat because if you look at that today, the products that are able to back up VMs running in AWS or those public cloud, right? If you want to be able to get them down, right, get them back, say if you move them off-site, those public clouds, and that was the wrong decision. We want to bring it back on-prem or move it over to another cloud provider. Make it pretty difficult to do so. Right? So VEEAM now, when version 10 of this product is released, will be able to agentlessly back up those VMs running in AWS. This is actually something Rick Vanover, our evangelist, actually showed us at our conference. He agentlessly backed up an AWS webpage and restored it actually as an Azure VM. Pretty cool stuff. Again, maybe it's just my nerd showing here, but that's pretty cool stuff, right? You don't hear that very often these days. So again, VEEAM, we're really going for that full availability platform, as we call it, right? So whether it's a virtual machine on-prem, physical machine on-prem, a public or private hybrid cloud you're working with there, we'll be able to support the full environment. Other than that, guys, that was pretty much about it. I mean, we'll hang around here for any questions, comments, concerns you guys have. But I really appreciate you guys coming out. So, thanks again, guys.